being born, living, dying, and being reborn again operates like some kind of missionary or messenger of consciousness, a cycle which keeps repeating until one has created sufficient balance within oneself.
Now, I believe in reincarnation, and in fact, I can remember being dead last time. And in fact, when you're dead, you feel a lot better than when you're what we call alive, because you're freed from all your physical infirmities for a start. That is, if you've been blind, you've got your sight back. If you've been deaf, you've got your hearing back, and whatever. You're not impeded by all these physical infirmities that make life so difficult in the physical world.
Physical experiences, thoughts, are converted into energetic vibrations and colors, whose structure and frequency become attuned to the soul. Each new life on earth is a continuation of the previous life. The many lives we have already lived contribute to the person we are today. Our consciousness continually emits signals to the mind, so that our thoughts attune themselves to previous experiences, enabling us to react to situations we have to learn and deal with. Often, we experience this as a duality within ourselves, with different impulses coming from the different directions. The more we go in a particular direction, the more our knowledge and command over that aspect of existence grows. Geniuses like Mozart and Einstein already went deep into their passion many lives before reaching their masterly expression. During the long cycle of reincarnation, we all landed everywhere on Earth. And we have been all kinds of religion.
Everything is connected, directly, instantaneously. That means that we are all connected, we are one. And this is non-local, independent of where you are, and it is an interconnectedness. Everything is connected to each other. So when you do or think something, everything else changes, the whole universe changes as well. So we are entangled as human species, also with animals, with plant, with nature.
So there is intelligence behind this entire world. There is a kind of design behind the whole thing. But we're a part of that. We're like units of this grand design.
Life does appear to have a purpose. That, there is what scientists call teleology, and they dismiss it completely.
Reincarnation, absolutely, sure. Sure, because, we have experiences coded in the DNA code itself, perhaps, and yes, you can relive those experiences through the DNA, the transfer of information in DNA. I think that's definitely a possibility. There's nobody in the field of molecular genetics who understands enough about consciousness and the physics of it more than I do who can possibly debunk that. So I can't prove it, but the proof is in the pudding. The proof is in the experiences. There's all kinds of data by really good scientists who have with these children in India, and they remember these things. There's no question that there's reincarnation. As a fact, it's there.
I could give you a scripted answer, a philosophical answer, but if I was being honest, I see life and death spiritually. I have to. I had cancer once before, so I have to be real about life and death, and I have to know it's God who controls all of this. And it's heaven and hell, where you go when you're done.
Okay. I lost a daughter, and I believe that she's still here. But when, how do I explain this? When she passed, it was hard, because I had to get mad. Okay, I had to release it, and I literally went up here in the mountains and got mad, and just, how dare you, this is not right, you should be here. And until I released that anger, she was not at peace. Once I released it, she's with me all the time.
A new birth always takes place at about the date the previous life ended, enabling us to resume the thread astronomically. The place and with whom someone is born is determined by a magnetic process which is attuned to the parent's consciousness. Each new birth on Earth is shaped from within consciousness and is experienced as a unique personality with an independent intellect. It's not the personality of the previous life. This personality continues to exist in the afterlife and can be experienced as an elder brother, sister, or guide stemming from the same consciousness. About 4 weeks after conception, a first connection is created between the fetus inside the mother and the consciousness willing to live a new life on Earth. After approximately 4 months, a new life is created. The fetus by then is inhabited by the soul. Throughout our entire life, consciousness emits impulses. It inspires our thoughts. These can react to that, always of one's own free will. Ultimately, our thoughts determine whether we react, and if so, how. These impulses can take place through a kind of magnetic connection between consciousness and the forehead. The signals from consciousness are transmitted in our body through the brain and the nervous system. From the soul, a second connection exists. This is connected to our heart and gives us life energy transmitted in our body via the heart and bloodstream. If necessary, consciousness programs unfinished events from a previous life into the cells of the new body by the chromosome system and DNA. And if consciousness determines that physical or mental defects have to be experienced, these will be programmed into the new body too. In the material world, we call this heredity. Both the physical and spiritual universes are electromagnetic, and therefore everything is attuned. Action and reaction, cause and effect are ingenious processes originating from thought. Our actions are driven by thoughts, and every thought is energy of a certain frequency, color, and sound. Every thought is a manifestation within our consciousness. Because of the magnetic principle, a continuous attuning takes place to equalize energy. This constant attuning also determines how and with whom you come into contact, to whom you feel attracted.
Mind is the fundamental nature of this world. Mind is primary and the material world is secondary. Mind is actually shaping matter at every moment. This is a terrifically different way of looking at the world. In my view, a very important shift that science is capable of making, I think. It's being nudged to do that by these pioneers. And when all of us understand this better, that mind is primary and matter is secondary, I think it'll be really valuable for all of us, because looking back on my own life, I feel I've seen so much more happiness, and life makes so much more sense when I've made that shift to understanding that my mind and my consciousness, my thoughts, are the primary factor in my own life. And if I attend to them and take care to think good thoughts, elevated thoughts about myself, about others, that changes the way I see the world. And that change in the way I see the world changes the world. It's amazing.
Many times I wonder, can fresh insights about consciousness help us to create a better life and a better world? Can they contribute to solving the problems we are confronted with in so many fields? Can they change our views about mind and matter? I was searching for scientists, authors and others who are working in these fields to discuss their views on consciousness. I believe human consciousness should be seen not just as a concept, but as a tool to act, something we can use in an active way. A broader view of consciousness can radically shift the way we all see, think and act.
Whole bodies of evidence, for example, going back to the debate over the role of complementary medicine. Some scientists, some doctors still today rejecting the whole thing as nonsense. Luckily a small band of them now, a small band of, and diminishing band of diehards, we would say. But that inability to see things that are staring you in the face is part of the human condition today, and it's one of the reasons that I think that we need this shift away from thinking of ourselves just as lumps of matter who happen to have become quite clever.
The new consciousness-based paradigm, when more widely understood and accepted, would help resolve many medical and scientific.
Overall, the medical community still has a mechanistic model of the body. And, it's a big machine and we tinker with it, we can fix it or not fix it. Death is the absolute enemy, as opposed to looking at a much broader context that say, it's a piece of continuation of consciousness.
If we understand that death is a transformation and that life is eternal by its very nature because it takes place in a context of eternity, that all we experience are transformations and that there is a kind of evolutionary direction to this of growth towards the light, some traditions say. If we understand that, then the fear which kind of paralyzes and which limits us to such a great degree kind of lifts.
I wrote a series of articles about organ donation for the Sunday Times. At the time, it was understood people were being encouraged to donate their organs. They were told that they would be dead when those organs were taken from them. But some doctors drew our attention to the fact that these donors were not dead. The concept of brain death was brought in, and then the equating of brain death with being dead, so that then allowed the surgeons to start operating on you while you were actually still alive. They did some stress tests, physiological measures, as the scalpel went in to start the dissection process. And lo and behold, they found that in many of these patients, the signals were of huge alarm. Blood pressure would shoot up, heart rate would speed up, all the signs of deep distress.
Neville Hodgkinson adds that in the wake of these reports, doctors decided to anesthetize donors to prevent the possibility of distress. To avoid unnecessary complications, we should prepare both donor and receiver based on a broader insight into consciousness and the way it is attached to our material life. The personal level of consciousness of both donor and receiver can influence whether an organ transplant is successful. If a donor is very attached to physical aspects, he might have trouble releasing these after the donation. Such a situation can pose a serious impediment for the donor in the usual process of dying and their journey to the afterlife. But it will also affect the receiver of the organ.
Some donor recipients, some organ recipients, have experienced a change of character after receiving their donor heart or lung or liver. And yes, it makes some sense that could be the case, that an organ would not only be a physical pump or whatever, chemical processor, but that something of the consciousness of the previous owner might carry over with it.
And I personally believe that each cell, each living cell in your body has a connection with consciousness. It's not only your brain, it's also your heart, but each cell has a connection. So when 96% of your body is still functioning, is still living, there's still a connection between all those cells and consciousness.
Colonel John Alexander had a remarkable experience showing that our body cells remain connected to our personal consciousness even when located some distance from ourselves. Saliva from his mouth was examined under a microscope 100 meters away from him when he had to address an important meeting.
And I stood up and I started describing the experiment, and the lab assistant comes running in and says, "What happened about a minute and a half ago?" He says, "Why?" He says, "Well, the needle just went crazy over there." And so what you saw was for hours, this little needle was just going blah, 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 blah. And then it got to this point, and it is hitting the stopper. It's just a huge electrical signal. Now, telling the National Research Council that the universe is not built the way they think it is an emotionally stimulating situation for me. And so it was my cells that it was monitoring. They saw this. Interestingly, when you get to the report, there's not a word. It's like the incident didn't even happen. So I say the white crow flew right in front of them, and they chose to ignore it.
From early civilizations up to the present, society struggles to cope with phenomena such as schizophrenia, psychosis, and dementia. Still, we cannot understand such states of mind. A growing number of scientists feel the need for a wider perspective, and it's only a matter of time before the majority in psychiatric research realizes that every important breakthrough can only be found within the new consciousness-based paradigm.
Psychiatry of all specialities should be dealing with the psyche, but there was really a move in psychiatry in keeping with the rest of medicine just to become very physically oriented, to regard every illness as caused by some deficiency and to provide a pill to try and make that good. Within the Royal College of Psychiatrists, there is a system where there are 6 or 7 special interest groups, and the fastest growing, with about 1,500 members, is spirituality and psychiatry. The Royal College, which is in charge of training and standards within psychiatry, embracing spirituality as a relevant subject for psychiatry. It's a great sign of the times.
Harry Beckers worked for 8 years with severely ill psychiatric patients, specializing in psychosis and schizophrenia. Based on his insights into the way our consciousness is formed and behaves, Beckers believes the symptoms of schizophrenia and psychoses originate in extreme and uncontrolled thought processes. As in a dialogue, the deeper consciousness continually intrudes thought impulses into the conscious thoughts of the patient until they become obsessive and uncontrolled. Long-lasting, powerful thoughts can create a certain frequency, which attunes to a state of consciousness comparable to the state in which we experience our dreams. Here, our thoughts create an instant personal reality, which can best be described as a dream or nightmare that never seems to end, experienced in a waking state. This process can also be experienced in other layers or states of awareness. According to this understanding, schizophrenia is not caused by a chemical malfunction of the brain. Actually, it's the other way around. The chemical malfunction is caused by imbalances between consciousness and thoughts. Insights into the mechanism involved, and through that, learning how to control thoughts can offer a permanent solution. The physical body has two separate connections with consciousness and the soul. An interruption to these connections has a direct impact on the functioning of the physical body. In the case of the heart connection, this instantly marks the death of the physical body. The second connection, between consciousness and thought, can also be severed. Beckers assumes it's when this connection loses inner dialogue that symptoms can be observed which we recognize as dementia. As a result, the frame of reference of thought limits itself more and more to signals only from the present life. At the time when there's no longer a tuning between consciousness and thoughts, thoughts are no longer registered in this energy field. The result is that every thought is forgotten at the moment of thinking. During life, every thought, every experience was imprinted in this energy field, which we also experience after death as the tunnel, the ultimate connection between the physical and spiritual realm. As long as the soul provides the physical body with life force, the mind may float timeless in this energy field. In a further state of this process of decay, experiencing just the memories stored in this field. After the physical death, the entire process of decay and the timeless experience is often perceived as a moment or a vague memory.
The argument that matter is the only reality and that mind is just some kind of cream on the cake resulting from neuronal activity, because scientists are holding on to that so tightly, it's actually stopping them from acknowledging and building into their awareness a whole realm of evidence that's accruing, that's indicating that that narrow view is limited in its usefulness.
There are interesting hints from conventional science of paranormal things. Some kind of contact at a distance is a characteristic of quantum theory, but we don't really understand how to put it all together yet, so that's a challenge for the future, I think.
A publisher approached me and said, would I write a book about the occult? Well, I didn't particularly want to write a book about the bloody occult. I thought, what a bore. Because I was a scientist. I'd been trained as a scientist, and I'd intended to become a scientist in my teens, until I suddenly decided that I'd rather be a writer. And so I thought, oh, well, no harm in writing a book full of nonsense. It'll make some money. And so I just started to write this book called The Occult. Then an odd thing happened. The more I studied the examples of the so-called occult and paranormal, the more I realized they were true.
In the early 1980s, I was fortunate enough to actually have an assignment in the intelligence community that allowed me to look at a wide range of anomalous phenomena. Remote viewing was one piece. I actually worked more with psychokinesis and some other interesting remote sensing technologies or other than remote viewing. So we were looking at the spectrum. PK was particularly interesting to us because people would say, what are you going to do, bend tank barrels? And you say, no, I'm going to move electrons. Computers are the risk, not bending huge things. That's just a demonstration of the capability.
The CIA also recognized this many years ago and defined remote viewing as follows.
What we do here is train selected individuals to transcend time and space, to view persons, places, or things remote in time and space, and to gather and report intelligence information on the same.
The insights into consciousness have a direct consequence and imply that life is not restricted to planet Earth. Of course, there are weird stories circulating about this, which is logical when you're dealing with a mystery. But surprisingly enough, just this mystery has the most evidence.
What we know is that 7% of the adult population of the world has seen UFOs. That is true in the military as it is in the civilian sector.
It's a matter of empirical fact that we're conscious. It's a matter of empirical fact now that there are UFOs, and that they are able to, for example, they're able to do maneuvers that our jet aircraft cannot do.
When I say multisensory, they're caught on satellites, they're caught on film, they're caught on radar. Just about every sensor system we have out there has caught them many times at the same time. So there's no doubt about the physical reality of the incident.
Some of them may be carbon-based like we, some of them may be silicon-based, some of them might be based on electromagnetic vortices existing in some plasma medium. I mean, some of them could be on a completely different plane of materiality, some other kind of level. So what?
The Condon report was actually right, because the question to Condon was not, do UFOs exist? It was, are UFOs a threat?
First of all, I do believe we're in cosmic quarantine, and they wouldn't really want to sort of be fraternizing with us on a sort of hey there type basis. They might observe and monitor and study, but they certainly wouldn't want to get too close. We are dangerous. We are killers. We're psychopaths. We're not really good neighbors.
Their purpose is, so to speak, to drive us up the evolutionary ladder, whether we like it or not, by subjecting us to experiences that completely change our ordinary paradigm. And that in other words, their aim is to create a paradigm shift in the human race.
Mind creates matter. This also means that matter reacts to our thoughts. The ultimate consequence could be that collective thoughts can strongly influence the Earth and even matter beyond our planet. Failure to understand this link could be a main reason for individuals ignoring major recent threats to the future of the planet, such as global warming, pollution, and exhausting natural resources.
I'm very involved in the greatest threat facing our world, global warming. This is something that is so big, and you would think to everyone so obvious, that it's the number one problem. Because if we don't do something about it pretty quick, we won't be around.
If consciousness mirrors the solar system, then it wouldn't be strange that while consciousness attunes to the soul, the solar system also attunes to the sun. This could have an immediate effect on the absorption of sunlight for the planets and increase temperatures. In such a case, we would have another dimension to think about as the cause of global warming. The universe is strewn with life. In our own solar system alone, there are several intelligent life forms developing consciousness in various ways. However, not in the physical form as we know it. But these life forms also originate from the great consciousness. They demonstrate a strong relationship with mankind, since they also evolve within the same great consciousness. So the faster we as mankind become aware of our origin and capacity and live accordingly, the sooner we'll be able to cooperate constructively and consciously within and outside the solar system. When we understand consciousness, the idea of other life forms in our solar system is simple to grasp. Many civilizations have inhabited planet Earth, from thousands to millions of years ago. The most recent had a huge impact on present mankind, Atlantis.
I think that there was a culture that covered the whole surface of the Earth at some point during the last 100,000 years. And I suspect that this culture had reached a fairly high level as long ago as 60,000 years ago.
The story goes that the further evolved beings were engaged in a fierce battle amongst themselves, a battle between positive and negative energy. the enormous friction between these powerful energies caused terrible natural disasters, which marked the end of the Atlantis civilization. One group of the further evolved beings withdrew to spiritual centers. They influenced people by means of negative energy. The other group also withdrew. They remained at several locations on Earth to guide susceptible people from there in a positive and constructive way. This dichotomy from the period of Atlantis still exists today and is the root cause of our most pressing crises. At an ever-increasing speed, we are breaking down our world.
Why was it that millions of people allowed themselves to be killed for nothing for several years in Europe early in the 20th century? What did they think they were doing? What was the First World War about? No one really knows what it was about. Everybody knew it was coming. There wasn't any informed or educated person who did not know that a world war was imminent. But what did they do to stop it? They didn't stop it. And this is what it's like now with the destruction of our planet.
We lost religion 2 or 3 centuries ago with the rise of science, and this was absolutely inevitable because it depended upon all kinds of superstitions and dogmas which were simply factually untrue. This began a long period of skepticism and gloom and misery, which reached its climax in the mid-20th century. Then I think we began to rise once again, and I think this rise will actually take the human race to a completely new level. I'm convinced that we are on the point of an evolutionary leap.
It's like a puzzle of 1,000 pieces. We had to start somewhere.
I think Max Planck probably got it right when he says science advances, funeral by funeral, meaning that the people with these preconceived notions have got to die off.
I call this the planet of the killer monkeys. We seem to only be interested in running around killing each other. That's our favorite hobby.
You want to have continual, people killing each other? Or do you want to go out into space? I mean, that's the choice. That's the choice. Do you want to live or do you want to die? Do you want to live as gods or do you want to die in this hell that we're creating for ourselves right here?
If we change our thoughts, the world around us changes with us. But if we accept and understand this broader reality, we can conquer the terrain of the unknown.
Modern physics has big enough concepts to explain all of these things as part of the natural order. It's not supernatural.
This is much more than an intellectual challenge. It is a sheer necessity. To survive, mankind has to solve the 5 greatest disasters in the world: poverty, famine, war, pollution, and disease.
Mind is the fundamental nature of this world. Mind is primary and the material world is secondary. Mind is actually shaping matter at every moment.
A debate has been raging in recent years over the rival concepts of intelligent design and evolution. But why must we think in the one or the other?
We're not just lumps of matter wildly and chaotically finding our way in a cold, hostile universe, but there's actually a beautiful plan in which we are participants.
Our world is a result of our collective thinking. Everything is entangled. We are the creators of our own cosmos, so we are responsible for everything around us. And although public awareness is rising enormously, change not only needs intention, but also action.
I feel that at this time I got together with people who are the backbone of an immense treasure of knowledge that has to be spread now.
It won't just happen. It requires a particular kind of effort to do it.
This film is an immensely important film, and I really hope that it spreads around the world like fire.